So it's no secret that attractive people tend to do a lot better in life than unattractive people. And most people who are at least familiar with my content are also familiar with concepts such as the halo effect. Nothing new here. But what I want to talk about today is an article that's based on a publication that was put out not too long ago that took inventory of the effects of the pandemic with respect to grades in the context of online instruction versus present instruction, which is to say you're actually there at the university in the lecture hall versus you just being at home and taking classes online. And there's some interesting findings because what happened here was they discovered that the so-called beauty premium, as they sometimes refer to it, was positively correlated in non-quantitative courses with better grades for both men and women in terms of presence instruction, which is to say you were there. But when the students went home, only the men continued to do well and the women's grades dropped in terms of the non-quantitative coursework. So the article isn't too long, so I will read the article and I will put a link down to the actual study if you're interested in it. It's not too long. It might be worth reading because I want to talk about some of the conclusions the guy draws and why I think it's a little bit odd for a number of reasons. New psychology findings suggest that attractive students earn higher grades in school, but for female students, this beauty premium disappears when classes are taught remotely. The findings were published in the journal Economic Letters. A large body of research suggests that physical appearance has an impact on a person's success. For example, attractive people tend to earn more money and report higher life satisfaction than less attractive people. Interestingly, scholars have yet to agree on the explanation behind this beauty premium. One account suggests that the beauty advantage can be explained by discrimination. For example, employers may inherently favor attractive over unattractive workers. Another perspective suggests that beauty is a productivity-enhancing attribute. This view suggests that attractiveness lends itself to higher productivity, for example, through increased self-confidence. I'm interested in discrimination generally, said Adrian Mehek, a graduate student at Lund University and the author of the new study. In economics research, lots of attention is given to discrimination based on gender and/or race. While these are important issues, there's not been much research on beauty-based discrimination in the educational setting, so the paper fills in a gap. Also, the pandemic made discrimination based on appearance much more difficult, since teachers could not readily see their students' faces, whereas discrimination on, for instance, gender is possible in the online setting also, as long as you have the names of students. Mehek conducted a natural experiment to hopefully shed light on the explanation for the beauty premium. The study investigated the effect of student attractiveness on university grades during both in-person instruction and remote instruction. This design allowed the study author to better isolate the effect of appearance, since student-teacher interaction is much lower during remote instruction compared to in-person instruction. Any attractiveness advantage observed during remote classes is likely due to a productivity-enhancing effect rather than discrimination. The researcher obtained data from 5 different cohorts of engineering students from a Swedish university, resulting in a final sample of 307 students. Notably, students in 2 of these cohorts had attended a portion of their classes remotely when the COVID-19 pandemic pushed instruction online. The content of these courses stayed the same, but lectures and seminars were conducted online. Although students were encouraged to turn their video cameras on during lessons, it was not required. To obtain an attractiveness score for each student, Mehek had an independent sample of 74 individuals rate the attractiveness of the students' faces. When analyzing the data, Mehek first found evidence of the beauty premium in traditional in-person instruction. For non-quantitative courses, e.g. business and economics, that were taught fully online, student attractiveness was positively correlated with student grades. However, this effect was not found for quantitative courses, e.g. math and physics. This was in line with the researchers' expectations, since non-quantitative classes tend to include assignments and presentations that encourage student-teacher interaction, while quantitative classes are often graded entirely through final exams. The results next revealed that the switch to online instruction eliminated the beauty premium, but only for female students. For non-quantitative courses, attractive female students saw a decline in their grades with remote instruction, while attractive male students continued to enjoy a beauty advantage. According to the study author, These findings suggest that discrimination most likely explains the beauty premium for female students, who no longer had higher grades when classes turned remote. But for male students, who continued to see higher grades with attractiveness even when student-teacher interaction was low, beauty seemed to be a productivity-enhancing attribute. The main takeaway is that there is a beauty premium for both males and for females when teaching is on site, Mehek explained. But for females, this effect disappeared when teaching was conducted online. This, at least for me, suggests that the beauty premium for males is due to some productive attribute, for instance, them having higher self-confidence, rather than discrimination, whereas it is due to discrimination for women. I was surprised by the fact that male students continue to perform better when teaching was online, Meg said. In his study, he discussed several reasons why physical attractiveness might enhance productivity for male students. For one, male students who are physically attractive tend to be more persistent and have greater influence on their peers. Attractive people also tend to have more social skills, which has been linked to creativity. Since non-quantitative courses tend to involve creative assignments and group work, men who are attractive and thus more socially skilled and creative might be more likely to excel in this coursework. It seems to be quite difficult for researchers to answer why people discriminate based on appearance, Meg added. Perhaps it's because when we see an attractive person, we assign them some characteristics that they may not actually possess, such as intelligence. However, more research is required to establish precisely why this happens. And there you have it. That is the article. And again, I will link the study in the low bar. But as you probably might have picked up, there are a few issues with this. The guy in the study did control for the gender of the instructor, and most of the instructors were males. There were a few females here and there. But let's set that aside because he doesn't really talk much about this. I think the biggest glaring, gaping hole here is that, as is very typical in the social sciences, you see absolutely no, and I do mean zero, reference to anything even remotely evolutionary or biological. You don't see any reference to evolutionary psychology, and towards the end of the article, they pose this question into the air, musing as if it were some deep mystery as to why attractive people have more success. It's pretty obvious for anyone who's taken more than a few seconds out of his day to think about this in an evolved context. The halo effect is very real, and attractive people are perceived as being more competent because attractiveness is associated with better genes. That may or may not be the case in some cases. It might be the case that an attractive individual is incompetent at some activity. However, generally speaking, that perspective has remained in place because people who look good are associated with better genetic outcomes. It's that simple. I'm not sure why we're turning this into a grand mystery, but of course, with respect to the social sciences, they rarely delve, if ever, into evolutionary psychology and evolutionary biology, so that's not really a mystery. And he does actually touch upon something that's very important here, because I've seen other researchers talk about this too. Not all beauty or not all attractiveness is created equal, and attractive men and women both benefit from the halo effect. That much is clear. But they benefit from it in slightly different ways. And I think what we're observing in the study is the end product of how that attractiveness pans out because men and women are served differently by their attractiveness. And what I'm about to suggest is not some rock-solid theory. Nonetheless, it is something that has been suggested and observed by researchers I've read up on. Essentially, female attractiveness tends to net them overall many more mating opportunities, many more men interested in them in terms of long-term partnership, etc., etc. So basically, attractive females get more options in the mating market. Okay, that's generally what women's attractiveness beauty does for them. It amplifies the opportunities that are already available to women because more women reproduce than men on average, and so yes, they have more opportunities. It is slightly different with men. Sure, attractive men get more mating opportunities, but there's another secondary, if you wish to call it that, effect, and that is, as the guy suggested, men tend to build upon their attractiveness with other men in terms of developing leadership skills, peer group, social skills, etc., etc. You know the non-meme about presidents being over 6 foot tall, as well as most CEOs. Most CEOs, of course, are over 6 foot tall. Height, of course, is an attractiveness feature in men. Generally speaking, when men form coalitions with each other, they form these coalitions in a goal-oriented fashion, which is to say they're teleological, versus women's coalitions, which are mostly just social. It's there for empathy, bonding on an emotional level, etc., etc. That's not the case with men. So what I think we're observing here is that, yes, attractive men do have quote-unquote confidence, in the sense that attractive men take advantage of their attractiveness to build utilitarian social group structures that benefit them in terms of grades, in terms of social climbing, because men need to achieve status, as well as work and money, whereas women's beauty only really serves them to net them more partners on average, because men and women evolve differently. Of course, status is important to women, but not in the same way as it is to men. Status does not make a woman more attractive. So it would follow that beauty for women would not necessarily be, quote unquote, weaponized to acquire more status, whereas with a man, that's almost certainly be the case. If you're an attractive guy, it's very rare that you're just going to only be attractive. You can use that to net other effects, such as building social circles that are useful to you, building coalitions, cooperative instances, as well as at times leadership positions. That's my take based on things I've read and researched over the years. I think it's pretty well demonstrated in this case. Now, again, the biggest problem with the study is not the methods, not the methodology, not the guy who conducted it, but the mentality behind it. I think people really need to start using evolutionary psychology, evolutionary biology, and the implications of these things when talking about human behavior. Imagine looking at an anteater's tongue or an aardvark's tongue, which typically is extremely long and sticky, and insects cling to it so they can consume them, and drawing no conclusions about the evolution behind that sticky long tongue that the anteater or the aardvark has. But when we talk about human animals, we live in this little vacuum, we live in this little corner, shut off from our evolved history, and it's always the same problem. These things are not as mysterious as people make them out to be. They're eminently understandable if you take the time to think in a way that actually makes sense, rather than looking at things in isolation and then being puzzled about the results with respect to certain things. Anyway, as always, thank you for tuning in. Please leave a like, share, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. Thanks for watching. And as always, if I'm still alive, I'll check you out later. May the gods watch over you. Take care. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.